Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast, Advanced Kayak Angler. This week with me, co-hosting this side over here, I've got the man. He was on last week. He's such a good podcast guest that going to have him as a co-host. How you doing, man?
Good, man. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you. So this week we'll go ahead and get right to it. We've got the man, Guillermo Gonzalez. He's so good. Everybody knows him by one letter, G. How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. How are y'all doing?
Good. So where are you at, dude? You're hunting, right?
I'm hunting. I'm in southern Oklahoma.
A dove season?
No,
Duck?
I'm bow hunting for deer.
Oh wow. Is that early?
The season opened 3 days ago on
Oh,
Sunday
okay.
morning,
It's early
I
October
for
know
1st.
here
hunting.
I don't bow hunt, but I know here in Alabama it hadn't started. Or everybody'd be talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think on in most states rifle season's in November, but bow usually starts a lot of the country around October 1st.
Cool. So like what is it? Mule? Just regular whitetail there?
Here, yeah, we're hunting whitetails.
Okay. Dude, I don't know how people have the money to do more than one sport. I
Me
barely have
too.
enough for fishing.
Oh man, I'll tell you what, it can it can be a strain sometimes to get it all figured out, but I live for it and I love it, so I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah.
All around
Well,
outdoors.
yeah. I do have to ask. It seems like a lot of guys, like you know, you have a lot of anglers, especially like the elite, higher level guys, where the Jason Christie's, Oklahoma guy. A lot of guys that they fish, and then Matt Airy, people that hunt in the off season. How do you think? How do you think that relates to fishing? Is there something to that? Because it seems like a lot of people that do that are kind of what you would consider like a natural angler, like people who can kind of read water, the conditions, things like that. Is that something like getting in the flow of hunting and fishing, and they just all go together?
Well, I mean, I don't know that I can answer that question for everybody else, but I can tell you what it does for me. So every year, I and so many others, we fish so hard. We
Yeah,
hit the tournaments hard, and by the end of the year, it you feel pretty strained to some degree. Not because I don't love it. I love it with every fiber of my being, or I wouldn't do it. But because it's tiring, it can be stressful, it can be expensive, and
yeah,
so on. And nothing in the world makes me feel more rejuvenated come February and ready to fish than being able to kind of take a break and not take it. I still fish in the winter and throughout hunting season, but I don't take it as seriously. I'm not getting out quite as much. I'm doing a lot more hunting, and sometimes taking my mind off it just gets me super jacked up to get going again in February. And it's kind of that feeling of just being jacked up as the motivation that I need to go at it, 100%. As opposed to by the end of the season, it seems like you start realizing, man, I'm not giving it 100. I gave it 75 at this tournament, and that doesn't sit well when you're a competitive person. But I
yeah.
can honestly say by February, I'm ready to give it 100, and I'm able to give it 100, just because that little break just kind of resets me for whatever reason.
I seen somebody not too long ago. I don't remember who it was. Somebody here locally. He made a post like after his tournament. Oh, it sucked, man. I want to sell my stuff, whatever else. I'm like, dude, if like he literally posted his kayak. I think he wanted to get another one, but everybody's like, "Are you quitting?" I think if you go hard enough in fishing or any kind of sport, especially kayak fishing, because it's such an individual sport, if you don't think about quitting at least once a year, like you're not trying hard enough.
Yeah, I guess it's that's a funny truth, so to speak. Fishing can be so, something early on when I first started fishing tournaments years ago. I'll never forget. I had a tough tournament, and this guy went up to me, asked me how I did, and I told him, man, I didn't have a great day, and he went up to me, he goes, "Fishing's the cruelest sport there is."
It's true.
I don't know if it's the cruelest. Golf might just be a little bit crueler.
Oh, F golf, man.
But
I gave that up.
but it can be a cruel sport, and there are times when you're just like, man, that wasn't even fun. You go out there and somehow every fish goes unbuttoned, and you just end up so upset, and it can happen, and it can get to the point where it feels like you want to quit, but it's crazy. It's like, if I feel like I want to quit, all I got to do is wait 10 minutes and I'm already ready for the next tournament.
Yeah, just give it some time.
Exactly.
Yeah,
All right. So the main reason we had you on, I mean, we could talk about a million different things with you, but is just Texas fishing. The state is so big. I know I was stationed in Abilene for 3 years, and I didn't get to fish a whole lot while I was there, but like, just tell us about fishing in Texas generally, the regions, how they're different, and kind of the trails that people fish in Texas. At least the big ones, if you don't mind.
Bass, the really big Texas
Yeah.
bass.
I am of the opinion that if you love to bass fish, there's not a better state you can be in than Texas. And I'll back that up by saying the reason that this is such a great state to bass fish in is the sheer diversity of fisheries that we have that are world class. Not only do we have, you can pick and choose however many world class fisheries, but we have so many different kinds of world class fisheries. We have rivers that you can legit out of a river go catch a 10-pound largemouth. We have ultra clear water reservoirs where you can go do the live scope thing, and then we have puddles of mud that you can catch 12-pounders out of. So I mean, I feel like we've got just such an amazing diversity of types of fisheries. The one thing that I would say Texas lacks, or I'm going to go ahead and say two, would be, of course, we don't have the smallmouth fisheries like they do in some other places of the country. And shoot, I was going to say one other thing, but now I'm blanking. Well, we definitely don't have the smallmouth fisheries, and that's the one thing. One of the things I look forward to every year is getting to go up north and do the smallmouth thing. But as far as being able to catch a giant largemouth in so many different kinds of water, it's really hard to beat Texas. Oh, I remember what I was thinking before. What we don't have as much of is every single one of our impoundments. Well, almost every single one of our lakes is an impoundment. So the only natural lake in the state is actually not even completely in the state. We share it with Louisiana, and that's Caddo.
Caddo. Oh, okay.
Yep.
Cool. Caddo is one, if people don't know, one of the best fisheries in the country. It seems like every time a national trail goes there, y'all just destroy them.
There's no doubt that place is a bunch of fun. But like I said, that just lends to kind of the diversity of fisheries that we have. I know Kurt spent some time here and fished a little bit, and I know you mentioned you were in Abilene. My goodness, you had some great fisheries around you. I wish you would have had the opportunity to do a little fishing, that's for sure.
Dude, that was before I bass fished, because I grew up saltwater inshore fishing, and then later, 15 years ago, I met my father-in-law who taught me bass fishing. But whenever I was there, I was too busy chasing women. And I was only from 18 to 20 while I was at 21 while I was there. I'm not trying to get in stories. Today's actually my anniversary, so I'm not trying to get in stories of other women. But yeah, we used to go down to Mexico all the time, and I would go right by Amistad or Phantom. We would go down to Del Rio, and we would go across the border there. And I think it's Amistad.
Yeah,
and it's like, now I'm looking back, I'm like, why did I ever go to Mexico whenever I could have went to Amistad all those times? It's such a missed opportunity.
Yeah, and that was back when Amistad was just ridiculously good. I've heard so many stories of Amistad at its prime, and it's still an amazing fishery. But from what I've heard, it used to be incredible. And I think all it's going to take is the Rio Grande to catch a bunch of water, and it'll be back. It'll come back really strong. It's just been 50 some odd feet low for I don't know how long. That might be the wrong number, but it's been ridiculously low for a really long time.
Yeah. So whenever you're fishing in Texas, like here in Alabama, I'm thinking, well, I'm going to go to Smith Lake. I'm fishing for mostly spots, some largemouth, light line, light gear, things like that. And then whenever I go to Gunnersville, it's heavy line, braid, a lot of grass, things like that. Whenever you're fishing in Texas, even if you're fishing a clear water fishery and you can still catch giants, how in the heck do you prepare the right gear for catching big fish on places that you would be thinking light gear?
Man, that can be kind of a stressful deal. Like, I'll give you an example. I've actually got a tournament coming up this weekend at Possum Kingdom, which by now, a lot of people have heard of. And Possum Kingdom has a lot of ultra clear water, and it has a lot of giant bass. And so I was actually tying up a drop shot rig to use out there yesterday before I left to come here. Just trying to get ready before I go over there. And
like a regular drop shot rig, not like a 12-pound line drop shot rig or something kind of heavier, just like a regular, like 8 pounds, 6 pounds.
Well, here's where I'm going with that. I usually, pretty much anywhere else in the country, 8 would be the go-to, 6 on occasion, but 8's the go-to here. And what I wound up tying on for this weekend, I could not get myself to go lower than 12 because I just, especially, dang near all of our lakes that are clear are full of timber. And if they're full of timber, they're full of zebra mussels. So it can just be a stressful cluster whenever you hook one of those big fish on light line. And even 12 is stressful, but you do the best you can. If it works out, great. And if it doesn't, it is what it is. But with 8, you're just asking for trouble.
Okay. So if you're going to Texas, don't bring 8, just 12 and up.
Yeah, I'm not saying there aren't scenarios. I've definitely had my butt whooped by people using 8-pound tests more than a time or two. But I know, like, for example, on Lake Fork, I drop shot with 15, which is heavy for a drop shot. Thankfully, Lake Fork, isn't ultra clear water, so you can kind of get away with it. But that just goes to show, that's still some pretty heavy line to be drop shotting with. But that's as high as I've ever gone for a drop shot.
So what size baits are you using? I mean, you're talking about big bass, 10, 12-pound bass. That's huge bass, right? I mean, that's some of the biggest bass some people will ever see in their lives if they have a chance to catch one. Are you going like really big lures, or what are you doing? I'm just curious, like on lure size. Not no secrets on what you're going to throw this weekend or anything, but I'm just curious on, like, overall, generally speaking, what would you throw for lures? Would you like upsize them and go through a bigger baits?
Well, I mean, honestly, I'm sure y'all have heard the saying, elephants eat peanuts. Now that doesn't mean that I only use small lures for big fish. That's definitely not what it means. But what it means is I really wouldn't do anything different as far as lure size than I would do anywhere fishing in the South. So, I mean, I can't say that I go that much bigger. Now, for example, of course, the swim bait guys, and every now and then I'll throw one. Yeah, I'll throw a big swim bait around, and we'll do that, and we'll fish like that. And it's a great way to target big fish. But for the most part, I don't fish here in Texas, aside from using a little bit heavier line and sometimes a little bit heavier rod. I don't really approach fishing here any differently than I would approach fishing anywhere else. I'm not going to say in the rest of the country, but at least in the South, from here to Alabama to Florida, Tennessee, and whatnot.
Is there, like, because I don't get to fish in Texas very often, there are certain, don't want you to give up your juice, obviously, besides a black flute, because we know you like a black flute. But Like, are there certain like whenever I think Pickwick, I think red bug. Whenever I think Florida, I think June bug. What are there certain colors in Texas that are just Texas colors? Like border
Uh,
crawl, I know Egg Zone has a like a red, kind of a green pumpkin reds, things like that. Are there, just Texas colors? I couldn't think of any.
well, we have so many different fisheries. We definitely so I mean it's hard to say that there's one
Yeah.
color, but like
Oh,
if you're in East Texas and you're not and you're throwing a 10-inch worm, for example, you'd be silly not to throw a plum worm, you know. Or if you're on Sam Rayburn or Toledo Bend or anywhere in East Texas in general, or really anywhere in the South, I guess this applies in the grass in February, you got to be throwing that red trap. And
yeah.
that's where, Bill Lewis, when they named their, that one that's got a little bit of yellow on the bottom and a little bit of red on the top, that craw color, it's called Toledo Gold. That's where that comes from. And Toledo Gold is probably, it's one of the most prominent red colors that we probably see across the South. And I'd like to think that's probably where it originated, but who actually knows?
I don't know. I know I throw one, but I don't know where it came from. It, thinking about all the different, I mean, you hear all the hype about OHIV, and there's such like iconic fisheries in Texas. Is there one that's your favorite? And what's one that's your favorite? And what's one that maybe people don't know of that you don't mind talking about? I don't want you to expose something you don't want to, but kind of, where what are those two?
Man, I have a lot of lakes that I really love. It's hard to pick one that's my favorite, you know. I
Yeah.
I love Lake Fork. I always have. It's always been one of my favorites. It's basically the lake that really taught me how to fish. I spent so much time out there for a long time just trying to become better at certain techniques and train myself, so to speak. But of course, I love Possum Kingdom a lot. It's a lake that I spent a lot of time in. Seeming crazily enough, I don't think I've ever had a good tournament on Possum Kingdom, but I have
Mm.
had so many amazing days of fishing out there that it's
This is the
hard not to
weekend.
call it. Yeah, this is the weekend, and I keep telling myself that because it just seems to never go right for me in tournaments there. But nonetheless, this is the weekend. You called it. Um, but then there's other lakes that a lot of people haven't heard of. Like for example, right down the road from my house, Eagle Mountain is an unbelievable lake, especially in like March through May. I mean, anywhere really is good in March through May, but this place is mind-blowingly good at that time of the year, and the possibility to catch multiple fish, you know, 3 or 4 fish over 7 pounds in one day is completely possible at that time of the
Uh,
year over there. Of course, not easy. It's not easy to do anywhere, but it is
uh,
definitely possible, and you can do it fishing in a variety of ways. Um, there's a lake that I really love, and it's really not a secret. We've never had it. I think actually All American did a tournament there. Um, it's called Lake Palestine. I absolutely love Lake Palestine. I don't get to fish it enough, but I hope that one day we land a national trail event there or another national trail event because that place, you catch it right. I mean, it can be pretty awesome. It's a lake where it's got certain parts of the lake that turn on really early. It's not uncommon to find fish on beds there in February,
mm,
and when that happens, when you get those kind of warm spells in February, that place absolutely turns on, and you can go out there, and it's the kind of down and dirty. It's not your live scope kind of deal. It's your flipping bushes and 8 inches of water
all
and
right.
getting on every piece of cover you can find and catching big ones when it's good. And it's for that reason I love it. These days I can really come to appreciate, especially these days, lakes where the live scope isn't going to win. It's just not. Now, honestly, probably you could win a tournament on on Palestine using live scope, but nonetheless, you know, it's hard to compete with the guys that can really catch them shallow over there. And for that reason, I really love that place.
So are there a bunch of smaller lakes like this in Texas that are like hidden gems? Do you have like a lot of stuff like that going on?
I
We
know
definitely do.
I fished Fairfield like 2 years ago, and I caught a 24. Another dude caught three 24s on the same day. It was like, good God. Like I caught one, and I'm like, hell yeah. And then I look at the board, and he's got three of them. We lost, like, I think we had 98. Well, it was 198, and they had like 215, 218 for 10 fish. And I was like, I quit. This I had such a good time, but I was so defeated at the same time. I just imagine Texas, like Kurt said, like has all these awesome little lakes like that.
It definitely does. Unfortunately, Fairfield is no longer open.
Yeah, I heard.
Yeah, which is really sad because it definitely was a gem. It definitely was such a gem. It was such an amazing place. I fished it. It actually, a fun fact, I used to catch redfish at Lake Fairfield.
Really?
It used to be a power plant lake, and it used to have, because of where the location of the intake and the discharge, it used to have
Mhm.
kind of current went all the way around the lake. And several years ago, Texas Parks and Wildlife stocked redfish in it. And it's my understanding that the redfish in there couldn't reproduce, but they
Mhm.
stocked enough of them that there was a very healthy population of redfish, and it wasn't uncommon to go bass fishing and flip up a redfish.
Wow.
That's awesome. That is
Yeah,
awesome.
that is
Isn't that
awesome.
kind of
I
neat?
didn't know that.
We still have 3 or 4 other freshwater lakes, I think, that have redfish in them.
That's like the most Texas thing ever.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Well, hey man, let's go throw some redfish in this lake. I'm tired of driving down to the coast.
But I'll tell you, I'll tell you the lake to watch out for. They finished impounding a new lake just recently called Lake Bodark.
Mm.
And they put it on the same quote unquote management plan as Lake Fork, to where they stocked the high end, I guess you would call them sharelunker fingerlings, into the brood
Yeah.
ponds. And so basically the lake already had, the right genetics before it even started flooding. And so it's going to flood with all the best genetics. And it's going to be, I think, approximately 18,000 acres. And it's my understanding that they left about 8,000 of those acres completely timbered. They cut out a few boat lanes going down the middle of it, but that's it. So that place here,
Wow.
as soon as it opens, they haven't opened it yet. I've heard rumors of the possibility of them opening it in the spring. But as soon as they open that place is going to be an absolute kayaker's dream. It's going to be very hard to get around, especially around that timber in a big boat. But in a kayak, it's going to be pretty awesome.
How
And
do
I
you
think
spell it?
it's kind of a weird spelling. It's BOISD apostrophe
Arc.
A,
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
something like that.
Okay, yeah, I see it. It's got northeast of Dallas. Wow. Okay.
That's the place to watch out for. That place is it's going to be incredible. I have no doubt about it. I mean, the habitat's right. They've got the right fish in it. I don't see any reason why that wouldn't be an unbelievable place to fish here in the next few years.
We got the genetics in there.
Yep. And
Yeah.
that's all that those are the only genetics that are in there as of right now.
Wow.
There's
That's awesome.
more sharelunker genetics in there, or more Florida strain genetics in there, than there are native genetics.
Is that why you think Texas? I mean, it's got to be one of the reasons why Texas is so good, because Texas Parks and Wildlife is just with the Share Lunker program has been so good. Oh, can you hear me?
I think I lost you for just a second. I heard you say
Oh, okay,
so good,
sorry.
and then I didn't hear it past that.
Yeah, just it. I mean, they've done so much work to. Sorry, I'm work stuff's coming through here. Let me
Oh,
close
no,
that
you're
out.
good.
Is that why all the fishing's so good? Just Share Lunker?
I don't think so. I definitely think that Texas Parks and Wildlife has one of the best, or Texas in general has one of the best management agencies for bass fishing in the country. And I think that's a part of it. But I don't think it's the whole story. I think it's just a combination of, we have the right size growing season, and clearly we've got the fish. And I think you put all those things together, and there's so many. The entire South has so many great fisheries, and Texas is nestled in just kind of a perfect spot for growing big fish. And that combination of fisheries that we have, of different kinds of fisheries, I think is what really makes this place so special.
Is there anywhere? I mean, you kind of hear stories about. Not that I know any stories, but like going to fish Amistad or some other ones that are border lakes. Are there any issue? Have you ever had any issues with something like that? I think what Stetson Blaylock or not Stetson Blaylock, one of the brothers from Ohio, Kurt, you would know, Shyrock. Like he went down there and had some people coming at him because he was told don't fish on the Mexico side. Have you ever had any issues like that? Because I was
Well,
thinking in a kayak, like you can't get away from somebody.
I've always been told, as long as you just stay on the right side of the lake, you're not going to have an issue,
Gotcha.
or you shouldn't have an issue. I'm not saying you're not going to, but you shouldn't have an issue. And if I'm being honest, I don't have a ton of experience fishing right on the border.
Yeah.
So, but I do have plenty of friends that have, and I actually have plenty of friends that actually duck hunt on some of those border lakes, and they've got guns and they haven't had any problems as long as they stay on the American side.
That's funny. I wonder why they don't want to cross over with the on. Oh, he's on the American side. Is it just like you're on our side, SA? Like free reign, bitches. Like we're coming after you now. You're over here messing with our fish.
I actually don't know. One thing that I do know, and one thing that I've heard from friends that have fished on those border lakes and have ventured onto the Mexican side, is that it can be kind of tough in some places because there's a lot of gill netting that happens on the other side. So you're out there throwing a crankbait. Next thing you know, you catch a gill net that goes across the whole cove.
Yeah.
So, I mean, with saying that, it almost sounds like those border lakes would be less productive to fish overall.
Yeah, you would think that, and I bet you that it definitely makes a difference in the fishery. But I guess there's always the potential, whenever you are uh culling the herd, so to speak, pulling however many fish. I think one of the biggest issues that we have in a lot of lakes these days is actually that not enough fish are being killed. Um, I, it's, of course, nobody wants to kill fish. As a tournament angler, I hate killing fish. I'll go ahead and throw all that down. But, there's no doubt that there are so many lakes in this country that would benefit from the harvesting of a lot more smaller fish. And I think Lake Fork is to some degree, is kind of an example of that. I think there are so many lakes in the country that if they had the same slot limit, and if you're not familiar with the slot limit on Lake Fork, to keep a bass on Lake Fork, it either has to be under 16 inches or over 24 inches. right? And I think there's so many lakes out there, like places like, I'm going to go ahead and name the number one place that I think, if it had a slot, not that I should be managing fisheries for anybody or anything, but I can't help but think that if they put a slot like that on Lake Guntersville, it would be the best lake in the country, bar none, by far. I mean, I think the amount of big fish that lake would kick out on a regular basis would be dumb. I mean, that lake already has
Yeah.
such an abundance of 3 to 5 pound fish. I think if you start culling out some of those smaller fish, you're turning those 3 to 5 pounders into 4 to 7 pounders.
I have a championship there this weekend. I'm looking forward to. It's like 2 hours from me. I'm looking forward to going to fish it. It's amazing how good that lake is, and it still gets so much pressure and everything else. It's amazing. It's still the lake it is. But it's also one of those. I'm not trying to get into Alabama fishing, but like it seems like in Texas y'all really take care of the habitat, and here in Alabama they don't as much. Where it's, let's spray all the grass. Let's down in Florida too, Okeechobee, they've seen their issues with water coming in and spraying and everything else. Like how it can hurt other fisheries. And in Guntersville, one of the best. It's so great because the habitat and the grass is so good, and they don't spray it. Maybe in the city they do a little bit, but not a majority of the lake. Is that
Right.
kind of, yeah? I mean, is that how Texas is? Like people just, it seems like there's a lot of respect for fisheries in Texas that maybe some other states don't have.
You know, I wish I could say that it was.
Yeah.
There are so many fisheries here that used to have grass and used to be so incredible that I'm not going to say are no good now, but they are not even close to what they once were. And
Yeah.
it seems like when one lake, like just as an example, there's a lake close to Possum Kingdom called Hubbard Creek. That was for a long time. We had big drought many years ago, and it got to about 30 feet low, give or take. And we had those big rains about 6 years ago, and it filled it up, right? Just completely filled it up from 30 feet low. And when it filled up, uh, all of a sudden, just hydrilla came out of nowhere, and
Mm.
that place was covered in it. And for about 3 years, that the fishing out there was unbelievable. And the amazing thing about it was it wasn't getting any national attention because nobody even knew about it before that. So, some Texas guys knew about it. Thank goodness, by the grace of God, I knew about it. I had some awesome days fishing out there. And then, uh, as of 2 years ago, we don't know what happened. There's lots of rumors, but all of a sudden, I remember in March, there was hydrilla. And by July, it was completely gone. It was completely wiped out. And that lake hasn't been the same since. Um,
Mm.
and there's a
Wow.
lot of other lakes that I can think of in Texas that has happened at as well. Now, what we can count on, just like hopefully you guys can count on that in Alabama, is that on a lot of the lakes like Toledo Bend and Sam Rayburn, the lakes that just are really bringing in the majority of their money from bass fishing. Hopefully, we can count on them not killing the grass in those lakes and keeping it around. But it seems like any lake that's got homeowners has
Yeah.
got homeowners that would do anything to make sure the grass is dead.
I, I'll never understand that. It seems like there was a place on Lay Lake here on the Coosa River. I used to fish it all the time, and it was beautiful. You would go back behind this bridge, and it was like all this grass. It was so beautiful to me. Like I even for not fishing, like I knew if like I could go back there, and it's like at least I'm going to enjoy being back there. Hopefully, I catch a couple. And this year they sprayed it, and it's like it just why would like grass? It looks natural and beautiful. I just don't understand why homeowners think that's a benefit. I guess.
And when they spray, it's different than using other pesticides for the grass. The spray moves all around, so it doesn't just affect the area they're targeting. It just kind of bleeds out and starts killing everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, it can really be to a fishery. It can be about as bad as it gets. But I guess it's just a reality that we live in as modern bass anglers, and
Yeah.
we just got to deal with it. And it does suck because it seems like anytime we do get a lake with grass, it only seems to last 5 or 6 years before it's gone. And so I hope I have a feeling Bodark, as soon as it gets done, it's more than likely going to have a lot of grass on it. Bodark, I don't believe is going to have all the land around its core land, so it's not going to have any docks, any homeowners. There'll be homes kind of on the land just outside of the core land. So I'm really hoping that if the grass does take off out there, they'll leave it there and keep it as kind of a fishery. I know more than anything when Texas impounds a lake, it's for water management, but
Mhm.
when you get great bass fishing as a result, I hope they can see the value in that and they can see the money that brings in and keep it going.
Sure looks good. I'm looking at it on the map like, man, it's a good looking spot. I'm excited to maybe go check that out one day.
So is
Is it
Texas
big enough to
actively
have a
building
tournament
more
on?
lakes?
Yeah.
Hang on, can y'all say that again? Or one of y'all? I heard y'all say that at exactly the same time.
Sorry.
So
Go
who
ahead, Kurt.
first?
Is Texas actively building more lakes?
Yes.
Because
Yep.
here in Ohio and the Midwest, I mean, it's very rare you ever hear of a new lake coming online. Very, very rare.
Yeah.
I mean, it's to the 1980s is the last time I heard of a new lake coming online.
I can think of 4 lakes right now that are being built.
Wow.
Wow.
And Bodark, of course, is the most notable. It's the biggest. But there's a couple of others that are a little further down the line. I think Bodark's the one that's closest to being open. Some of these other ones we may not see for another 3 or 4 years and up to 10, 15 years down the line. But Texas, as far as I know, is actively trying to build more reservoirs. There's no question Texas is, it's a blessing and a curse. It's one of the fastest growing states in the country. And as a result, with more people, you need more water. And so they're trying to be proactive and making sure they got enough water for everybody.
Pat Mays looks good too. It's not too far from there.
Nope, it's a good lake.
It's Texas, man. Yeah, y'all are so blessed to have
What's
so
the
much
worst
great fishing.
lake in Texas?
What's the what?
The worst lake in Texas. The one you wouldn't tell people to go to.
Oh man. See, I'm a terrible person to ask that because I feel like I'm the kind of person that will find something good about any fishery. I can enjoy myself in a complete dump, but if you're gonna make me pick one,
That was like a humble brag. Like you can find fish on any bad lake.
no, not necessarily. Well, really, more than anything, it's a humble brag on Texas.
Yeah.
There's really not there's not many lakes out here that are bad necessarily. There's definitely some worse than others. But I guess if I had to pick one like really large fishery that wouldn't be actually this is easy. The Sabine River.
Man, them Cajuns love to eat some bass.
Yep, they do. There's no doubt. I mean, and I haven't even fished it, but I've heard the way those elite pros seem to talk about it. So
Yeah.
They never have anything good to say. Nothing about
not really. At least not behind closed doors.
I know the fishing isn't awesome. I wonder why there hadn't been a kayak tournament there, like a big national trail.
I think there was one. I think KBF had one like 4 years ago or something.
Oh, really?
That's the only one that I've ever heard of.
I seem to remember that.
Cool.
I didn't do it, but I seem to remember them talking about it.
Yeah.
So what? So I guess we've talked about Texas. How are you looking forward to fishing the TOC? I wrote down you're ninth in AOY, so you had a great year going in TOC. Yeah, you're looking forward to that.
I can't wait. The TOC, I think the Hobie BOS has done an amazing job of making the TOC I don't know any other way to say it other than the pinnacle of our sport. If you bass fish out of a kayak, that is the tournament that you want to get to more than anything. There's some other championships out there that are huge and awesome, but as far as just in terms of the class of the field and everything, it's really hard to beat that tournament now. Chickamauga in November, there's no doubt that that's going to be a very challenging event. If I'm not mistaken, by that time of the year, they'll be dropping the lake. And anytime they I know on any of those Tennessee River fisheries, anytime they get to drop in the lake, the fishing tends to drop off pretty fast. But I'm staying optimistic. It's the fall, and you could totally be right place, right time in the fall and have an absolutely killer day of fishing anywhere in the country. It might be a tough time of the year to fish, but big things can happen if you put yourself in the right place. And I just hope I can find that place.
Well, I say at least it's a giant lake with a very small field, so y'all should, even if they drop the lake, you should be able to all spread out. Except there's a couple places people will bunch up, but
yeah, there's no doubt. But let me ask you guys something, and this is just out of curiosity. I've always thought, and you guys might shoot me down for this, and I know some other anglers that would too. I always thought it would be so cool to have a TOC on a small lake. And when I say small, I mean, if you wanted to, you could get to any part of that lake from one boat ramp. I'm not saying like tiny, but like small enough that you could get to anywhere in that lake from one boat ramp. I think that would be so cool. I want to know what y'all's opinion is.
So with the TOC format only being 50 anglers, that could be totally doable. And I think that would be neat. I think that'd be really neat.
I think from like a coverage standpoint and just a camaraderie standpoint and so many things, that could be just a super cool deal. I know here in Texas, we have some smaller lakes, like you mentioned already, like Fairfield. There's a few other lakes out there that are just like it. Fairfield would be a great example. You've been there. You can get anywhere on Fairfield from one boat ramp. Yeah, you'd have to paddle or pedal your butt off if you wanted to get to certain places, but you could get there. And, that would reward some anglers that are willing to do something like that. But, from a coverage standpoint, I just think it would be so cool, especially on a lake where, there's a million different ways to catch them, offshore, shallow, whatever it may be. I would love to see that someday.
It'd be cool for a championship like that with a shotgun start. Like I wouldn't want to see it in any other events, but in a championship,
and I agree with you.
That would be fun to watch.
I want to see that. Now, mind you, in Texas, we've had 150 boat events on Fairfield.
Wow.
And it was fine. Like it really was. Of course you don't think of it as ideal, but once everybody's out there and everybody's doing their thing, you don't think of it as anything different as any other tournament. You're just out there competing against the fish, trying to figure them out. And now I agree still, I would prefer not to put 150 people on a lake that small, but I think 50 to 60 people on a lake that small is completely doable and could be a ton of fun.
Yeah. I think you're right, especially with the coverage, man. Having a media boat, that could really go around, spend time with each one of the top 50 guys.
No.
Yep.
You could drone most of the lake too.
Yep.
Like just drone from one to the other. That would be cool. The I guess there's one other event that's coming up. The what's it called? The Big Texas Open kayak
The
event.
Lone
Duke
Star
runs.
Throwdown.
Yeah, there you go. When is that? That's coming up
That's
soon,
this
right?
weekend.
Oh, is that it? Oh, okay.
Yep, that's the one I'm fishing. Now it's also being run in conjunction with the Bass Nation Texas State Championship. So they're kind of,
Okay.
I'm gonna double dip, and
Mhm.
there's actually some pressure. I really would like to qualify for that kayak championship in the spring on 10 killer, and I'm not qualified yet. And there's going to be some pressure because I don't, right now there's probably about 100 people signed up for the Throwdown, but I don't know how many people are signed up for the Bass Nation event. And so there's probably not going to be very many spots up for grabs. And there's definitely a lot of pressure to be on one of those top spots, especially on a lake that hasn't treated me well in tournaments in the past.
I'm down for any event where I can eat good, like they do at that event.
That event, bar none, has better food than a lot of weddings I've been to. I mean,
Heck yeah.
incredible food. The guys, part of your entry fee goes towards the food, and they go big, really big, and it's awesome. Honestly, I would encourage anybody, because it's my understanding that even from out of state, you can show up to the Lone Star Throwdown and declare. Because the way the Throwdown works is, you fish for your region of the state, or your trail, so to speak. So, of course, being from Fort Worth, I would fish for the North Central Texas region. But it's my understanding you could come in from out of state and declare any region you want and then still get to eat all the food. So I think it's a pretty good deal for anyone that would ever be interested in coming down.
Heck yeah. I know it's one of those events that and the All American, that's the open that they have every year where your club can come. A few guys from your club can come fish. I know there's a few events like that. I've always wanted to fish, and Lone Star Throwdown's definitely one of them. So maybe next year.
It's kind of cool to live in a state that has such a variety of trails. I mean, we have, I'm not even going to claim the number, but we have at least 5 highly successful trails in this state. When I started kayak fishing in this state, we had really one, and that was Cats. And back then, because we had that one, each one of those tournaments was bringing, at the very minimum, 130 people a tournament. And that was pretty cool. But like I said, Texas had that one trail, and that was it. Now we have a lot of trails, and our sport's grown so much. And it's so cool that we have enough trails to put an event like that together and have a bunch of fun at it.
Cool. All right. Well, man, we don't want to hold you up from hunting any longer. Appreciate you being on. Want to give you a chance to shout out any sponsors or where people can find you online. So
Of course, yeah. Y'all, everyone can find me on Instagram and Facebook. I'm not always the best at adding people on Facebook. I need to get better at that, but nonetheless, free to follow me there. I don't really feel the need to just go ahead and name all my sponsors. And if I got to name them now, I'm probably not doing a good enough job representing them, but definitely want to thank each and every one of them. They helped me so much. And if it wasn't for them, I couldn't do what I do. I'm so thankful for it. And more than anything, thankful for the sport.
Heck yeah. Well, good luck this weekend, man, and good luck out hunting.
Yeah,
Thank you so much, guys. Had a blast with y'all.
Thank y'all. All right. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see y'all next week. Later.